Hi, this is Darren from SimNation. Just doing the championship game for WWPF tonight. For those of you who don't follow SimNation, WWPF is one of the longest standing leagues at SimNation. It is our Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2024 league. And it's been around forever in multiple iterations. First of all, sorry I haven't been streaming a lot lately. Work has been pretty hectic. Plus, I've been traveling quite a bit and trying to spend some time with the family. So I haven't been making videos like I was previously. But want to kind of dive in a little bit to WWPF and talk about that a little bit. Then I'll talk a little bit about SimNation. But ultimately, probably around 8 o'clock, we're going to start with the championship game. This year it will be Peter, who is, of course, the Oakland Raiders, against Invisible Witness, who is the Carolina Panthers. And I'll talk a little bit about that matchup here in a moment. For those of you not aware, shameless plug for SimNation. SimNation has multiple leagues, mostly draft day sports, college football, draft day sports, pro football. Plus, there's a bowl-bound college football league and a uh, essentially an OOTP baseball league here, known as SNPBB. Two of the draft day sports leagues are actually coach-only leagues, meaning that you can't use custom playbooks and essentially you have to use whatever your coach has. So that would be our GM leagues, which is GM-CFL, which is the college league, and GM-PFL, which is the pro league. Both are entering their second season, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a future video. But just to kind of talk about the WWPF, I mentioned it's been around forever. It was originally managed by Gary and Frankie and Skelter. They managed this for a very long time, and then of course I took over after having been a coach in the league for quite some time as well. Tonight's game is probably going to be a really good one. If you think about the last four seasons alone, Carolina has been in the championship game three times. Oakland has been in the championship game, including this year, three times. Carolina, of course, won it all a few seasons ago when they downed Pittsburgh. Oakland won it the season before last when they beat Carolina by a pretty wide margin. And then, of course, last season, Spoof came out of nowhere to win it with Seattle over Peter at Oakland. Just from a logistics perspective, Oakland has 10 titles. They, I think, by far are the most championed team in the league. Of course, that is mostly been Peter. So Peter and Oakland probably are the best team in the history of the league. And then, of course, over the last few seasons, Invisible Witness, I think, joined us like four seasons ago, and he's been doing nothing but winning championships since then and being in championship games. So this one will be really interesting because it absolutely is probably two of the best coaches in the league right now. So kind of talk a little bit about how we got here. So this has been an interesting season. We had a first in the league with two teams that made the playoffs with losing records. Uh, One of them is Jacksonville, which is one of the open teams, was formerly Starfinder, but he moved on. In the New York Giants, who are cable, and both of those teams made the playoffs with a losing record. And then, of course, the really kind of the top three teams in the league from the regular season were all in the AFC. So it was Pittsburgh, of course, who was number one, Oakland, who was number two. Oakland, of course, only losing to Pittsburgh, and then New York was number three. We'll talk a little bit about New York in a second because Spriggs this season managed to take over as the all-time career-leading passer from the immortal Joe Rayner, who was one of Oakland's greatest quarterbacks, probably the greatest quarterback in the league when you think from championship rings, because I think he has like 10 if I remember correctly. But Spriggs did in 16 seasons, whereas it took Raynor essentially 20 seasons to pass for 70,000 yards. Spriggs, of course, passed for 71,346 to be exact. So New York had a great season. On the AFC side, it was really Carolina and Seattle going at it for their 1 and 2 spots, and then as you can see from the screen, Detroit had a pretty good year as well, make it into playoffs, but the West was probably one of the best conferences, hands down, out there with Los Angeles, Arizona, and even San Francisco all staying in the mix throughout the season. Baltimore, of course, has come on under Kevin. When we talk about the different teams in the NFC, you have, of course, I mentioned Invisible Witness at Carolina. Seattle is Spoof. If I remember correctly, Los Angeles is Barry. If I get it wrong, don't get mad at me, guys. It's been a long week, so. And then, of course, you have Don Lucky, who is at Arizona. Philadelphia had a pretty good year, and we'll talk about Sam Major in a moment. And that's, of course, Justin, who's one of the newer coaches. A little bit off year for Templar at Dallas. Uh, Maybe a little could have gotten a little bit more there, but he'll be back next year. And then Tampa Bay had a pretty good year with Kyle, who is one of the coaches there. When we talk about Detroit, that's Brian. He's done a really good job with Detroit since he's had them. Chicago just missed out on a lot of things, and of course, Chicago is Cotton. I think if I remember correctly, he did make the playoffs, and then Rick had an off year with Minnesota. So um, if we look at the league leaders, I'm going to do a little background because I think well, we're at time and I could start if I wanted to. But I'll finish just this quick conversation. So as you can see, Spriggs had over 6,000 yards passing. Arturio Bates, who is with the Texans, had a really good year as well. And if I remember correctly, the Texans are JP. Norris Goldman, we talked about Barry already. Norris Goldman is a great story as he's a quarterback out of Texas. And then, of course, just reloading is Peter with Keith Tennant. Spriggs also led the league in passing touchdowns as well. Again, I think he has like 670 passing touchdowns, I think. Um, and then, of course, you had Arturio Bates, who had 54. When you look at rushing yards, the battle over the last few seasons has really been between Lackey and Ford, Pittsburgh and San Francisco. Lackey has one extra year on Ford, but these two probably are going to be going at it for the next couple years, and both of them potentially could make a run at the all-time rushing record in the league. Receiving wise, if I remember correctly, Adrian Torres is a rookie and was picked this year, and just an absolute monster season. Definitely probably is going to win Rookie of the Year though. And then tackles, Sam Major is a rookie, was one of the was the number one pick this year, and as you can see, he made the most of it. Just a great season for Justin. They'll John Van Buren made life difficult for Pittsburgh in the AFC North out of Baltimore, so great season for him too. And then, of course, Peter always has done a good job of having really good defensive ends, and Dustin Sousa was at Baltimore. And of course, he moved over to Oakland and has been pretty much a sack machine since then. But when you talk about a 1-2 punch, Copeland and McFadden at Seattle have been a very effective duo for Spoof. And interception wise, I think this is the first season that we had someone new actually win it. In the past, it has largely went to the same guy over and over again. David Bachman out of Arizona, of course, claimed that title. So real quick, I'm going to go ahead and import the teams, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we got here, because I think that's important. So, um, I'll just make sure that I'm not missing anything here because that would be embarrassing. Panthers, where are you? So Peter's good. And my eyes are not good today. Good. So both teams are good. I'm going to go ahead and go to the playoffs. I'm not going to sim just yet. Let me just double check and make sure. So, kind of going back and talking about how we got here. So, we talked a little bit about the wild card teams, which were Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, New York, Baltimore, the Jets. Of course, the Jets won the conference, so did Jacksonville, and New England. So, the two wild card teams were New England and Baltimore in the AFC, and then Los Angeles and Chicago in the NFC. So, as you can see here, is Detroit won the rematch still, and then in probably what was one of the better games of the off season was a really big shootout between New York and Los Angeles. Will Goldman had a great game, but ended up losing to Witten in that one. Big shocker here, maybe not as big because I think this is the second year running where Baltimore's knocked out New York. But Kevin took out New York to move into the divisional round. And then, of course, New England easily got by Jacksonville. This was not as easy of a game for Shark, who's at New England, because Jacksonville's just been a pain in everybody's tuchus since they've started making the playoffs, where they've actually knocked off some of the top-rated wildcard teams. And then, of course, in the division championship, Invisible made short work of Cable in New York. We'll talk a little bit about Carolina in a second. Spoof won a overtime victory over Detroit. Another great game right there between those two. Kevin finally got his revenge on Pittsburgh by knocking them out of the playoffs. So Pittsburgh was a one and done. Um, and again, just a really good season from Baltimore. And then, of course, Oakland made short work of New England. There's a little bit of a history, though, between Peter and Shark. Uh, but this one, Peter took quite easily. And then, of course, in the conference championships, another really high scoring game. You saw a lot of this in the NFC, but this time Invisible got revenge on Spoof. Spoof, of course, beat him last year on his way to the championship, and then Invisible got him this year. And then Peter made very quick work of Baltimore. With Oakland 59-6, which kind of should worry some people about what Peter might do tonight in that game. So when you look at these teams, and we'll take a look at them real quick. I think I can look at the matchup. Yeah. So you arguably have the best defense against the best offense. So Carolina, of course, has the best defense. That's been a hallmark of Invisible Witness since he's joined the league. And Peter has always been known for his offense. He had a little bit of a lull there when the new version came out as he was adjusting to it, but he's right back to where he was before. And as you can see, he's the second ranked defense as well. So don't think that that team's not capable of playing defense. They definitely are, and Peter is really good at defensive matchups. So is Invisible. I think this game is really going to come down to one who can move the ball. So both of them are able to run the ball. If Carolina can establish a running game, I think that they have a chance. If they can't, I think this could turn into a very lopsided matchup the way it did 2 seasons ago when Peter, I think it was like 65-36 or something like that. Well, Peter just absolutely shredded Invisible. But Invisible's looking for payback, and he's got a good quarterback in Zelensky who should allow him to do that. Plus, that defense is really good. And I think this for Peter, it's all going to come down to how Tenet plays. If Tenet has a good game, I think Peter has a really strong chance of taking this one relatively easily. Because the only stumbling block that Oakland had this season was Pittsburgh. And of course, Pittsburgh's not in the picture. So, but Carolina plays a style similar to Pittsburgh in some regards. So it should be a good game. I'm hoping for a good game. Um, and as you can see in the head-to-head, the record is leaning towards Carolina 8-5. But in fairness, these two coaches have met in the playoffs in the championship game 2 seasons ago when Peter won it. And then, of course, the year before that, Carolina beat down to Pittsburgh to win the championship. And the previous year before that, Pittsburgh downed Carolina. So Carolina, outside of last season when Seattle made it, has been a regular participant. So, um, so one of the things I will say is he was hoping for a good game. I am going to just double check and make one last time that everything went through. I did look because what I'd hate to have is us to have a game and then not really have one. So Carolinas went through April 1st, 5:04, and Oakland's went through April 1st, 5:35. Both of them are showing as green with success, so I think we're good. Um, and throughout this, I may be paying a little bit of attention to the game itself, but feel free to ask questions and we can go from there. But this one should be a doozy. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and play it. Um, so I'm trying to think if I can just play the game. I should be able to. So we're gonna change play speed, keep that the same. So here we go. Actually, no, we're not gonna do this. Let's go here. So we will watch the game. Okay, so play speed, go down to that. And here we go. So Oakland is kicking. Carolina will get the ball first, and pretty good return for Carolina. Again, the key here with Carolina is Zelensky needs to have a good game. It'll be interesting to see how they play this. And unfortunately, that one got broken up. So Willis is a really good running back. Know a lot about him, and as you can see, there already is a sack. So Sousa will pretty much be in there a lot, but I think that one got called back. It's going to be really hard to run against Peter. In general, I find Peter is very good against the run, so we'll see how that maps out. Really good pass there from Zelensky to Sullivan. Sullivan's a person to keep an eye on. One of the very good wide receivers along with Maddox. And Peter's just going to blitz him like crazy. So let's go ahead and go here because I think we care more about that. So Zelensky is off to a decent start, not a great start, but it'll be pretty critical that they keep him upright. Another incompletion. So part of this honestly is going to be that Peter's going to play pretty tight coverage against them. So they had to punt. Now Oakland has the ball. Let's see what Oakland does. Peter will run the ball to establish the pass, and then he'll use a lot of play actions. But he's capable of just varying it. So it's not a shock that the first two plays for Oakland are run plays. Not sure why this is not updating. There we go. So first pass of the game, and of course it's incomplete for Oakland. Let's see what they do here on a 3rd and 3. No gain, so they'll probably punt. So the first possession for each team ends in a punt. So we'll see how this continues to go. Decent return of 11 yards. If you notice that there's a lot of dime being played, both these teams are going to try to shut down the pass. Zelensky, of course, has long been a pretty good quarterback for Carolina. That's a lot of time. But again, Pito has one of the better secondaries in the league. So it's going to be really hard to pass against them. And again, just not a really good start for Zelensky, who's 1 of 5 for 25 yards. And again, another punt, and here comes Pito with what looks like a wishbone. Is that a wishbone? That was a wishbone. Sorry about that. False start. You hate to see that. That kind of negated the good run from Peter. So Leonard's trying to run again, and he'll use Leonard a lot to try to open up the passing lanes for his team. So lots of time Hill and broken up. Negretti's someone to keep an eye on as well. Pretty good. I think he's a safety, if I remember correctly. Could be a linebacker. It's good to see Sutton's back, but again, first two series for both teams end in a punt, so we may be headed for a defensive slugfest, which is kind of what you would expect out of the top 1 and 2 teams in the league in defense. And Ramey this time gets Zelensky on a corner blitz. So I probably should have turned off the sound before the game. So, which hopefully is not playing for you, but it's playing for me. But another drop. This one's off to a pretty slow start. We're 11 minutes in, so good reception there, but of course Carolina is going to punt. They're not going to risk it. And this one may go back for a touchdown, and it does. So, or no, just to the 1 yard line. So that's probably going to be a touchdown for Peter and Oakland. Lots of time and touchdown. So Oakland gets on the board first after that long punt return and gets a 1 yard touchdown. So let's see how Carolina responds. Tennant, of course, up until then hadn't completed a pass. So that was his first one for a touchdown. Let's see if Zelensky can get going. It's a good completion. I think that's like 2 in a row for Zelensky. And Oakland gets hit with a penalty, which gives Carolina a first down. So in this game, it's important for a response. So Willis with a good run there for 10 yards. So far, we're still in the first, and it's pretty close. Finds Maddox. I think one of the keys for Carolina is they got to get Maddox in the open a lot because he gives them a slightly different look than, say, maybe Sullivan does. And that kind of hurt. Took a 3rd and 1 and made it a 3rd and 6. So penalties are playing a factor here, but Willis is just having I'm sorry, that's Fulcher, who is kind of like a wildcat. He's out of NC State. Was one of the better quarterbacks for Van, who is one of the college coaches. So again, Maddox starting to see Carolina come to life. They're making a drive out of this. Hope is that they can keep it going. But again, my hope is they don't keep targeting Sullivan. I think that that's a bad matchup for Carolina. only because it looks like Ramey's on top of him, and that one kind of hurts because Sullivan was open and it looks like they missed him. So we'll see what happens here. It's very important that they come away with points. And it's a touchdown. So with just 35 seconds left, it looks like we have a tie score at 7-all. Carolina came back and scored. So see if this continues to be a tight defensive game for Carolina, or if Oakland is maybe we're starting to see the beginnings of the game opening up. So this should be the last play of the first quarter. And Peter is starting to run the ball really well. So before that was Easterling. This is Leonard. It's a nice 1-2 punch for Peter. And now he's going to throw the ball, and that could be a touchdown. But thankfully for Invisible, Sherman got there and stopped him. So Peter's driving again. It definitely feels like the game is starting to open up, and another first and goal, it looks like, for Peter. And that should be a touchdown. So after 2 straight drives to begin the game, ending in punts, Peter now has put 2 straight drives together to score touchdowns. So we'll see how Carolina responds. Game has definitely started to open up, which is what a lot of people I think were hoping for. I think I may be the only person who really likes defensive games. But again, as I mentioned, the more that you throw to Sullivan, I don't think that that's a plan that's going to end well for Zelensky. He's got to really find Maddox. And I think that's Maddox, and that could be a touchdown. See if he gets winded and they catch him. Nope. So 78-yard touchdown pass to Maddox. Maddox has great speed. He's going to be a handful for Oakland to guard. So that was a great pass from Carolina. Not great stats for Zelensky, but after 2 straight drives ended in punts for both teams, now 2 straight drives have ended in touchdowns. So see Easterling again. You can see a lot of that with Peter in Oakland, where they're going to switch Leonard and Easterling back and forth. It looks like DeLeon is in as quarterback instead of Tennant. If I remember correctly, DeLeon is a better runner than Tennant is. So Leonard is just kind of starting to run wild. So is Easterling. And this should be a touchdown. So Peter comes right back, responds with a touchdown. What looked like it was going to be a defensive game is now quickly turning into a very big offensive game. So let's see how. And so it would be interesting to see what happens with King. So King is a really good tight end who's got a lot of speed. Again, it's kind of a shame. Maddox should be able to get open quite a bit. King actually should be able to as well. The challenge, I think, is going to be to find them. So that's good first down for Carolina to keep the drive going. So, and get a good run there. So Willis is also starting to pick up some yards on the ground as well. I think you'll see quite a bit of off tackles. Huang, I'm not as familiar with, but probably covering for the fact that Willis may be getting tired. DeVito is a very fast running back, so keep an eye on him. If he gets out into the open, he's likely going to be gone. So Schumacher, that falls incomplete. And we have 2nd and 10. and tried for King again. Looks like King was double covered actually on that play. So we get 3rd and 10, and we get another sack, this time from Miranda, who's the defensive tackle. So that will pretty much end that drive. So they'll punt, and with 5 minutes left, Oakland will get the ball back with a 21-14 lead. So looked like that one was straight up the middle, and they managed to stop it. And again, looks like another draw. So we'll see how this plays out. That time they get to win. So good job by Carolina to respond to keep the game close. So definitely the two teams are kind of going tit for tat in regards to how they're playing. So we'll see if Carolina can get something going here before the half. That was a good pass to Sullivan. So far, of course, most of Maddox's yards came off the very long pass, but an incompletion. Oakland's doing a pretty good job of keeping Zelensky honest. I mean, 9 of 22 for someone of Zelensky's talent it's not something you see out of Zelensky very often. So we'll see if he can get this off, and they will try for the field goal, and it's good. So it's 21-17 with just under 2 minutes left. I am going to pause at the half and just kind of talk a little bit for about a minute. And Oakland finds Sutton again. Sutton is a really fast wide receiver as well. Pito does a really good job of stacking his offense. And again, Kelly. So Tennant actually is having a pretty decent game so far. They got him that time. Excuse me. So 2nd and 19 with under a minute left. Oakland has one timeout left. They'll try to see what they can do on 3rd and 16. Now, you'd like to see Carolina call a timeout here, and hopefully CPU will to get the ball back, but it doesn't look like they really did. So with 17 seconds, Carolina may just sit on it. Not sure why. Okay, I'll leave that alone. So we'll see if they can get one last play out of this, and they find Schumacher. I think that may actually end the half, and it did. So we're going to pause it right here. So really big play to end the first half for Carolina in getting that sack to keep the game within 4. So if you're late joining us, the game started off really defensively, where both teams essentially ended up punting for the first 2 series, and then of course Oakland got a big punt return that took it all the way to the 1-yard line where they punched it in. Carolina came right back down the field and scored off of a Zelensky throw to Maddox, and then Pito came right back down the field and scored again, and then with I think it was Tennant, where he got it to the 1 again and was able to punch it in. Actually, I think it may have been DeLeon running that in. And then Zelensky, of course, found Maddox on a very long touchdown pass to make it 14-all. Pito scored again. And then you had a little bit of back and forth, and then Carolina got a field goal and was able to hold up Oakland from scoring again. So that way, um, they are able to go into the locker room, which is a 4-point deficit. Now, Carolina will kick to Oakland in the second half, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Thoughts on the game so far? It's much different than what it was 2 seasons ago, where Oakland just ran away with the game. I think the key is Zelensky really needs to get started in the second half. He's 10 of 25 for 189 yards. On the flip side, Peter's doing a pretty good job of running the ball. He needs to do that in order to open up the passing lanes. That's his style. Versus on the opposite side is Carolina's not doing a bad job of running the ball, but they're probably throwing the ball a little bit too much. But again, it's still early, so it'll be interesting to see. If you look at the team comparisons, is Oakland has 11 to 9 first downs. Both teams are definitely racking up the yards. The defenses have got some good stops, but at the same time, the yardage would indicate it. We could be headed for like 400 to 500 yards of total offense between both teams. Both teams have been getting to the quarterback. That hasn't been as big of a problem. Penalties, thankfully, haven't been playing out that way. The key metric here is Carolina's doing actually pretty good on third down, whereas Oakland's struggling on third down. But again, Oakland's also not getting into a lot of third down situations. They like have half of what Carolina does. So I think Invisible's right. Zelensky just needs to get going. No turnovers so far, and I probably just jinxed both teams with saying that. But if I had to take a guess, I think this one's going to come down to the wire. And it'll be interesting to see right now with how the two teams are playing. This will be unpopular, but I think Peter may be headed for his 11th championship. But if Zelensky gets started in the second half, I think Carolina's got a good shot at winning this one. And making it 2 years in a row will the NFC continues to hold the title. So we're going to get started with the second half. And Carolina, of course, is kicking off to Oakland, and not a big return there at all. I would agree that King needs to really be more part of this game than he has been so far. So Leonard is continuing to do his thing. As you can see, he's already got 68 yards of offense. Tennant is not a guy who you want to give a lot of time to. They find Stanton for 13 yards. So Oakland's opening up with 2 first downs. And you see Leonard again running for 11 yards. He is a very, very strong running back. And he's also fast, so that's going to make life a little bit miserable if he starts getting open a lot. Missed him that time. Peter will throw to the backs out of the backfield. I think that's actually one of the first times we've seen that so far, though. Easterling, 4 yards, major penalty. They'll hopefully the injury to Hoover doesn't hurt Carolina bad, but that pushes Peter and team back. And of course, he gets a first down by finding Leonard. I definitely think Carolina would love to start seeing Oakland turn the ball over, but this DeLeon is really good at running the ball. As you can see, he gets them into a first and goal at the 4, and that much time typically is a touchdown. So, but it wasn't in this case. They're at the 1, second and goal. Let's see if Carolina can hold. They get a stop there against Leonard. It'll be 3rd and 1, or 3rd and goal on the 1. And that's a touchdown. So Peter now has 2 passing touchdowns, 2 running touchdowns on the day. So Carolina definitely needs to respond here with a a drive of their own and make sure that they score. So see if what the conversation in the locker room looked like. So Zelensky finds Willis for 22. Willis is one of those backs that can come out of the backfield and make long catches. So Schumacher is a pretty good wide receiver, but again, I think that Peter likes having corners who can definitely cover well. That's regrettable that they weren't able to find DeVito because again, if DeVito gets into the open field, he's gone. He's just that fast. So 3 yards, that isn't going to get them there, so they'll end up punting, which gives Oakland the ball back. But this one looks like it really kind of nailed Oakland into a coffin there. So we'll see what they do here. This would be a good place to get a stop. So again, most of the times teams are very conservative within their own 5. So I don't expect that. That's kind of a heartbreaker for Carolina. Reyes managed to get out and start getting them some space, so now they can open up the offense. That's a miss for Sutton, for Tennant, sorry. So Tennant's actually having a decent game. But the real story here has been the rushing attack. Another big sack for Carolina. I think that's like the 4th sack of the game. So this time it's Bowers. So that definitely was a big play for them. Hopefully they can make something of it. That, of course, was not what I think that they wanted to have happen. Orta's one of those guys who can get open. He's not going to go end to end though, but he is very good at finding space. So Oakland's doing a pretty good job so far of moving the ball down the field. That false start kind of hurts because it gives them 2nd 10 instead of 2nd and 5. We'll see how this one plays out. Like to see Carolina. I think Peter and Oakland are able to exploit some of the corner blitzes that you kind of see out of Carolina. One of the things I would love to see in this game is the ability for the coaches to go head to head in the final because I think that would be a lot different. Um, and looks like Carolina hopefully can hold them to a field goal here, and they do. So score is now 31-17, still very much in it with a minute 28 left, especially if Zelensky can quickly move this one down the field. So looks like they're really trying to get it to DeVito. But Zelensky, this is probably one of the worst games I think I've seen him. And the good news is they get the ball back, but Sousa's not a guy you want in the backfield. So that one definitely hurt, and looks like they may get him again. Almost, this is kind of one of those where you might go for it, but there's still enough time that, I mean, all they really need is 2 touchdowns and they're back in it. So again, another really good punt by Carolina. They have on 2 straight ones kind of pinned them back. Now it's just for the defense to hold them back. So I think that is enough for a 1st down. It gives them a little bit more space. Yeah, I would agree with you, Invisible, that Zelensky's just having a bad game. The game is, I think, still there. Will Carolina can get back into it, but a turnover, they really need to try to get a turnover. Or something that will kind of take the momentum away from Oakland. Because right now Oakland definitely has the momentum. Again, another good pass to Orta. you're gonna see that a lot today. Is Peter's very good at getting everybody involved in the game. Orta's already over 100 yards receiving on the day. Kind of probably not who I would have thought would have been over 100 yards, but um, it's just a good game from him. And then, of course, Leonard is having a really good game because he's over 100 yards too. And it's 3rd and 10, under 10 minutes left. They really need to get a stop here, and they do. Another sack. So, I mean, Carolina's defense has been able to get into the back. Not sure I like that call, but it's not a bad call. I think that Oakland's kicker has the leg to do it. That sack may have sapped some of the life out of Carolina, but they definitely need to. Ooh, we got away from it. That was good. So finally find Schumacher in the open, a double corner blitz that kind of looked like that could have ended badly for Carolina. He's got lots of time. DeVito, for whatever reason, either he's overthrowing DeVito because of his speed, or DeVito's just not able to get it. Another corner blitz, and this time they get him. So I would just tell you all, I'm a big fan of corner blitzing. So it's one of those things where I cringe when I see it, but also I like when I see it. So with 6 minutes left, I mean, you have to punt it here, but if they can't get a turnover here, this game's over. So 14 points isn't too hard to come back from, but if Oakland starts driving, this one's going to be over. So they definitely need to get some stops here. Reyes is pretty hard back to bring down. Another good catch there. So Oakland wants that clock running, and with 3 minutes left, the window is really quickly closing. And of course, that run probably is the one that puts the nail in the coffin. I've seen wilder endings, but I mean, you're also talking about Peter, so unfortunately, I don't think you're going to see a wild ending that involves Peter losing in a massive way. And that pretty much is the end. So great season from Invisible Witness. Peter will now win his 11th title, unless something really weird happens in the last 2 minutes, which I don't expect it to. But hats off to Invisible in Carolina. I mean, when you think about it, he has been in the finals 4 times in the last 5 years. So, in fact, I think I may be wrong on this, but Invisible made the playoffs on his first season in the league. So, just really great. And you're starting to see some of the frustration play out with the unsportsmanlike penalty. So it's 4th and 20. They're going to go for it. Unfortunately, that's probably going to mean Peter's going to score again. It make the game seem a little bit more out of reach than it was, because I don't think Peter was going to sit on the ball. So it looks like the championship will come back to the AFC, to Oakland. But again, when we look at this season, nothing to be ashamed of from Carolina. They had to make a pretty hard run to get to the finals, and as a result, it'll end up being 43-17, 41-17, sorry, unless something changes. Definitely the game Zelensky had, not normal for him. Kind of attribute it kind of like to, I'm a big Pittsburgh fan, so I compare a lot of things to Pittsburgh, right? Um, is when Pittsburgh played Seattle and Roethlisberger just had a bad game. Um, but again, hats off to Invisible. Hats off to Peter for the 11th title. Um, he remains the person to beat in the league. Um, and maybe next year, what I need to figure out with Pittsburgh is just how to lose in the regular season to him, so that way I have a chance of beating him in the postseason. And that looks like it was a safety, but pretty sure there was unsportsmanlike on that one, so it doesn't count. And of course Sullivan tries to get a big gain right at the end, and that should be the end of the game. So final score today is 41-17. The big story here is Zelensky threw for 278 yards, most of that to Maddox. Had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no real turnovers. There was only 1 fumble, and that was recovered by Carolina on their own. We'll go to the box score here real quick. So, as you can see, is the Raiders really came on in the second half. The game was really close in the first half, but it was all Oakland in the second half. So Peter probably gave him one of his famous talks. Zelensky was sacked 9 times. Tennant was sacked 5 times. 310 yards from Zelensky, but that 44% completion rate definitely hurt. Versus the 61% from Tennant, who had 2 touchdowns. Leonard had a really big game with 2 touchdowns as well. Um, so, sorry, I was just looking at what Peter was saying. So Easterling also was a good 1-2 punch. Willis never really got started, but Carolina was throwing the ball. And then on defense, as you can see, is Bowers had 2 sacks. But the story was here was Sousa and his motley crew of people just going straight after Carolina, which is it's a hallmark of what Peter does. So I'll go ahead and show the score. I am going to go ahead and upload this. I don't think that he should be the MVP of the game. I think that the MVP of the game should be Leonard. Or actually the guy who returned the punt should be the MVP of the game, because I think that that really opened things up. So that would have been Sutton. Uh, I don't. He's not going to win the season MVP, Peter. I'm going to tell you that right now. You can't take it away from Spriggs. Um, if anyone was going to take it from Spriggs, it would probably be Bates. But I do think that he had a great year. Okay, well, we'll take a look at that real quick. So let me do this. I am going to upload this real quick. And then I am going to go through and go ahead and do the MVP. Yeah, but in fairness, when you look at the fact that he broke the career record this season, and you look at just all the things he did, I think it is a little bit harder to say just because of 150 more pass attempts that he doesn't deserve it. Because you still have to explain why Bates doesn't get it over Tennant. So, but we'll see. I'll see what the CPU thinks, and then we'll go from there. Just give me a second. I'll show you. I can't really do anything right now because of the HTML stuff. Um, so for the people in chat, because I think we only have what, 6 right now. If you follow the league, who do you think should be the MVP, Tennant or Spriggs? I already know Peter's vote. So, and we'll look at them real quick. So if we look at it, probably wrong view. Just go play with stats. So this is Ray Spriggs. So 325 completions on 535 attempts, 6,169 yards, 62 touchdowns, 6 INTs, a 134.7 rating. Keith Tennant, 386 attempts. So Peter's got a point, 240 completions, 5,157 yards, 56 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 63%, a 141.2. I mean, there's a case for it, and I'm not going to disagree with it. It's just, at the end of the day, it'll be interesting to see what the CPU thinks. I think those are really your two conversations at quarterback. Now, I am going to throw everybody a curveball because the one thing that you do have to factor in is this dude, Adrian Torres. Uh, 86 catches, 2,044 yards, 18 touchdowns. Now, he did have quite a few drops, but 24 yards per catch is pretty freaking amazing considering that he is a rookie, too. Now, I know Peter's going to say, well, Sutton's just as good. And I don't know that I would disagree with it. Or the third choice is, and I don't think this is a choice, by the way, is Lackey out of Pittsburgh. But I would say I'm not comfortable with him being the MVP because while Pittsburgh went undefeated, and Lackey was a major reason for it, he didn't break 2,000. So we will go ahead and see what the CPU thinks, and then I will make a choice. But I will say great job for everyone this season. We do have some open teams if anybody's interested. I don't want to make this a long stream. About 50 minutes is all I'm willing to do. But Cincinnati's open, Jacksonville's open. You have San Diego, Kansas City are open. I'm trying to think who else is open. I'm going to stay away from this area because I think one of the AFC coaches is going to move to the NFC, but New Orleans is open. And I think that's really all the open teams we have. So if you're interested, definitely let us know. Shameless plug for SNCFL, which is the college league that feeds the WWPF. If you're interested in that league is in its off season. I will be working on the draft file probably sometime over the course of the next week and start putting some teasers out there. But I'll go ahead and advance this and we'll just see what the CPU thinks. I already know what the CPU thinks. It's going to be Spriggs. So the reality is, I'm curious what other people would think as to who should be the MVP. If it's my vote, I would say Spriggs only because Spriggs broke the career passing record this year and it's his last year. Whereas Tennant's a younger guy, but I also get Peter's point that Tennant was more efficient. Yeah, there's no doubt Major is going to win the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Torres is going to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Uh, I don't have an issue with Sousa winning this because I think traditionally it's been the sack guy. The only guy who would probably come close to even competing with him would be, I don't even see him on the list immediately. Yeah, it would be Sousa. I don't agree with this one. So I think it's between these two. Um, so I'm just trying to think through that. And since no one but Peter's telling me in chat, I will hold on that and I'm going to go ahead and bring the thing to a close. And then I will put it in the Slack chat for people to vote and say who they think it should be. So I'll let democracy choose. But for Major, Sousa, Torres, they're going to win the awards. There's no logical choice other than them. So again, thanks everyone. I will try to get back into doing some videos. I do have a defensive video that I'm going to be putting up, and maybe this weekend that I did to kind of talk about how to build defenses. Because I know a lot of people keep asking me that. And Pittsburgh has historically had a decent defense. It's what I tend to ride off of. And then, of course, there'll be some videos around SNCFL. I would ask you to check out our two GM leagues, GM CFL, the college one, GM PFL, the pro one. The major difference between the GM leagues and like WWPF and SNCFL is that in the GM leagues, you don't have any ability to edit your playbook. You have to use the playbooks that the coaches have. And it makes for a little bit more interesting dynamic. So that's it for now. Thank you all. Congratulations, Peter, on the 11th title. Congratulations on a great season, Invisible, and up until like the fourth quarter, it was relatively close. And then hats off to everybody who made this a really good season. So again, thank you all for your participation. And if you have any questions, let me know. But I will get that defensive video up here this weekend. Thank you.